Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Oral Tradition with David
and Jordy.
We're here in a recording studio live from Vancouver, British Columbia, and we just wanted to talk to you guys today about Angels in America.
That's right. Angels in America, a gay fantasia on national themes, is a play in two parts, written by Tony Kushner in 1991. It is the story of two couples, a gay couple and a nominally straight one, trying to survive in Reagan-era New York City. They, along with the people closest to them, face such challenges as Republicans, Mormonism, homophobia, vengeful ghosts, forlorn angels, and Roy Cohn. And, centrally of all, is the 20th century plague known as HIV/AIDS, and what that crisis meant for the LGBT community and for America. I should also mention, the play is very funny and full of magics. And that's Angels in America, in a nutshell. What a challenge to be like, just explain in a quick blurb what Angels in America is. Yeah. Because Tony Kushner has admitted to being like, I just wanted it to be about everything.
Yeah, Angels in America is one of Jordy's favorite plays.
It is.
He has known of it for how long?
Oh, I first watched the HBO version, which I think is a lot of people's gateway into the world of this play, in like 2012, I think. Yeah, late high school, early college.
Okay. It wasn't like you saw it once on TV when you were 3 years old or whatever you were in 2003?
No, it was a later, like I knew about other plays. I had heard of it for a long time and had seen, I'd been interested in theater before that, but it was a later discovery.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Nice.
Fine.
So today we are... Like we said, we're talking about Angels in America. Thanks for tuning in to the Oral Tradition. What we're doing today is less of a review because
I'm not going to review Angels in America.
yeah, it's not going to work. Number one, because it's great. Number two, because it deals with a lot of very serious things that it's just not our place to talk about.
It's like if we tried to review the Emancipation Proclamation.
Yeah.
It's just not...
Yeah.
We can speak on it and our feelings, but we're not going to be like, 4 stars out of 5.
Yeah, no.
For the Gettysburg Address.
Yeah, and it is that good. And I hear... There was a moment where we weren't going to talk about Angels in America because we were like, but everybody knows it. It'll seem redundant or whatever. But I run into people all the time, constantly, who haven't seen Angels in America.
Probably a large portion haven't seen it, or haven't heard of it even. So I think it's important for people who consider themselves, definitely for people who consider themselves queer, because it's part of the canon. And also for anybody who wants to see a really great encapsulation of what it is like to live in that time period.
Yeah.
This late capitalist society that we live in.
Yeah. And to be clear, when we say see Angels in America, we mean either any stage production, read the script because that's readily available, or there's an HBO version from 2003,
exactly.
Right? 2003?
Yeah.
That came out that is also quite good, starring Meryl Streep, Al Pacino, and others.
And others, including, what's that actress's name?
I know.
She's famous.
I know, she's the best. Emma Thompson,
there we go. Jeffrey Wright, playing Belize.
Jeffrey Wright, who's supergoood.
Oh, something Liebman.
Mary Louise Parker, Patrick Wilson, and Ben Shankman.
Yeah, so I'm happy to, if you have any questions, David, I introduced Angels in America to David, and he has since become a fan of it as well. And I've recently read the oral history titled The World Only Spins Forward, which is like a 500-page long oral history of the different productions of Angels in America since like 1991 and etc. So that has been a very interesting and enlightening experience to learn more about the different productions, how it's been presented, the challenges that it's faced.
Wild. Did you say if I have any questions?
Do you have any questions?
Opening the floor to David for questions?
Yeah, David.
Because I see Angels in America as Jordy's baby in a weird way. Like he introduced it to me. It's one of his favorites. I feel like it's an inspiration for a lot of the work that he does because of, well, there's a thing. Okay, so Jordy, what would you say are qualities of Angels in America that you find like valuable to translate into your own work?
Well, I think most of all, or like very high at the top of the list, is like its audacity, its willingness to be grand.
Real quick, this podcast is brought to you by Audacity Sound Recording Technologies. It's true.
It's true. It's brought to you by Audacity.
But yeah, Audacity in what?
In Audacity, in the scope that it's willing to present, like it's 7 hours long altogether if you combine Millennium Approaches, the first part, and Perestroika, the second part. And that's the edited version. When Perestroika was first, the way that it worked was Tony Kushner had finished Millennium Approaches. It was getting its first productions, and he went away to a cabin for like a week or 2 weeks or something like that, and he wrote 24 hours a day and didn't sleep and was just up all the time, and he wrote like a 500-page long first draft of Perestroika, and then it had a public reading that went on for like 8 hours by itself. Wow. It was wild. It was huge. He just couldn't, he just had so many things and different threads, and the character of Belize was originally supposed to become a leader in an AIDS activism group, like an ACT UP type group.
Oh, of course.
And there was a whole side plot there, and Roy Cohn becomes God's lawyer because at the end of Perestroika, Prior Walter is like, you should sue his ass. And then it carries on to being like, okay, the Angels are going to literally sue God. And Roy Cohn's like, listen, if you don't take me to hell, I'll do this for you. I'll do all the work you need. I'm the best lawyer in New York City, baby. I don't know, and that might be there's tons of different editions of Perestroika as well, because Millennium Approaches pretty much Tony Kushner wrote it, and it was perfect as it was, and he hasn't touched it since. But Perestroika has continually been edited and changed, and parts have been added and parts have been removed, and it's constantly transforming because he can't ever quite nail it down. So that's another quality that I love about this and inspires me, is that it's always changing and growing and willing to really reach for something lofty, I suppose. Tony Kushner has said that he tried to balance the challenge of reaching for profundity while also being aware of profundity's ugly cousin, pretentiousness, and how oftentimes you can't reach for one without the chance of the other happening. So if you're afraid of sounding pretentious, if you're afraid of making something because the people are going to be like, oh, how pretentious of him to even try, then you're never going to be able to reach for, big things. It's a pretty audacious thing to call
the play
Angels in America, which is a very big, and then have it in 2 parts, and one's called Millennium Approaches.
Yeah. Would you say that Angels in America sort of staked Tony Kushner's claim as a playwright? Was he a well-known name at all before that?
He had only written one play before that called A Bright Room Called Day.
Okay.
In 1988. Like that. Well, he had written many plays. He originally was a directing MFA, so he had studied directing initially, and then he
What does that stand for? Motherfucking asshole.
Motherfucking asshole. Master of Fine Arts.
Yeah.
And then he started writing his own work, and at the beginning was very weird and political and such, and then A Bright Room Called Day was sort of his first major production. It got performed in New York, and it was fairly successful.
Okay.
And had many of the themes that would carry on to Angels in America and later works of being very political, but also with humor, having a bit of magical elements, etc.
So to recap some qualities that you admire, it's audacity, it's kind of fluidity and willingness to change, and
It's humor.
it's humor.
Absolutely.
Cool.
And just the language, I think,
Yeah.
on like a sentence by sentence way, it is some of the most beautifully musical and rhythmic language. He has a great ear for character voice.
Yeah.
And having it come out in very fluid ways, like it just feels natural, and each voice has its own tonal quality, and within that he adds just enough poeticism. Like the poeticism never feels like it's overpowering the story. It's because the story itself is so filled with like magic and these high goals that the poetry just feels natural. Of course characters in this world would speak this way.
Wow.
Yeah, it's a pretty cool
play.
It's a pretty cool play. I think it gets 3 stars out of 4. That was the oral tradition. Thank you so much for coming. Bow, bow, bow,
Bow, bow, bow, bow, bow, bow, bow, bow, bow. So Jordy, since first seeing Angels in America or being aware of it, has your view or views on the play evolved?
Well, I think I've grown to appreciate the balancing act that it does more and more, because it feels so natural when I watch it. I'm just like, oh, this is an entertain. It has some beautiful moments. It's very powerful, but more and more as I've written more, the balancing act of being so big, but also being entertaining, but also being very, very political, but not polemical, and etc. Yeah. I want to avoid sounding like Louis Ironson from Angels in America, who just like rambles on about these things. But that character is the character closest to Tony Kushner.
Yes.
Like that's how Tony Kushner sounds. So if you watch the film version or read the play, a character named Louis Ironson, that's pretty much the closest to who Tony Kushner is, which is great because he's kind of a villainous character. Or a hard-to-like character for the choices he makes.
Yeah, Louis, the character from the play, is.
Louis, not Tony Kushner. Yeah.
Tony Kushner's quite a malevolent character.
But Tony Kushner is not malevolent, but he's definitely can be a handful.
Yeah.
Has been a handful for directors. So yeah, that has changed my understanding of the craft of the work and how much craft is in there. And then also trying to both even though I love the play and it's incredible, trying to still have a critical eye and hear dissenting voices on the quality of the play. One of the major things that has been brought up about it is how there's really no community in the play. Like none of the queer characters sort of live in vacuums. Like their relationship, and they do go to like a funeral of a friend, but you never see any of those people. And that was a frustration that gay activists had at the time, was like, community is so important to us, and there's no way that a major drag queen, that Prior Walter was a drag queen beforehand, would not have a group of friends that would rally around him. Like he has Belize, and Belize sort of is almost representational of a larger community, which might be why Tony Kushner wanted to add in the concept of him creating like AIDS quilt type community activism thing in a first draft of Perestroika.
Belize being an activist?
Yeah, Belize becoming an activist.
Cool.
Because he represents all the community.
Okay, yeah.
But yeah, people are frustrated. Like, very few people, or people didn't often leave their partners. And if somebody did do that, he would have like a whole community rallying around them. And there's no community, really. There's no representation of like just gay friends hanging out or like dealing with the AIDS crisis as a community, which was much more how it worked. That's how they survived, or how we survived, was rallying through community.
Yeah.
So the fact that they're kind of gays out of time frustrated people because they felt it didn't speak as strongly as it could to the moment.
Yeah.
And also the representation, 2 of the 4 gay characters, 2 of those 4 are pretty unpleasant in their choices and their actions.
Being Lewis and Joe?
And Joe.
Okay.
Yeah, Lewis and Joe. They leave their partners. One is dying of AIDS. One is a drug addict.
Right.
They run...
The partners that they left are dying and drug addicts, not these 2 characters.
Yes, the partners that they left are drug addicts.
Just in case anyone listening isn't familiar.
And so people also were frustrated by the fact that they were representing at a time where, like, at the height of the AIDS crisis, these characters were being shown, half the gay characters are shown as morally ambiguous and fraught and internally challenged, which I think makes it age better, because I think it's just as important to show queer characters as humans, not as perfect representation.
I was just gonna make a joke of like, what imperfect queer characters? How implausible!
I don't believe it. I've never met one.
I don't enjoy that negative representation. So yeah, so you would say now it feels a bit more rounded as far as how you see the play and like understanding how other people might see it.
Exactly, trying to comprehend it from more angles. I still really, really love it.
Yeah, and it's an interesting point about the lack of community or whatever within the play, because so much of the conflict within the play comes from them being these very isolated people. And almost by like inserting community and inserting the support of friends into the play, you have to like find new ways to make the characters tick, because the whole like for my money from what the play looks like is like a sort of examination of what a lack of community could look like and why it is so important, and how we can represent, like, that can be represented by showing the sort of vacuum and how that impacts certain people. And then the angels are maybe something else.
Well, that's the thing, is in the structure of the play, even though it's this huge big play, 90% of the scenes are two-handers, are just 2 people talking, and it's only at the very end of the play that Prior Walter and Lewis and Belize and Hannah, who is a Mormon, is another character who comes in.
Okay.
So all the 3 queer characters and this other friend that they meet, that's the only scene at the very, very end that has like 4 people together just hanging out and talking. And I think it's almost like a breath of fresh air that it's in the epilogue, where they're just you just have people together and you see that support that they now have for each other.
Interesting.
Yeah. So I think you probably have something there, in the sense that Tony Kushner was playing with isolation and what that does, and kind of the beauty of having a community or people to support you, and people there for you. Yeah.
It's a conversation you and I have had before about like, how do we represent sort of like ideals on screen without making them completely boring, or like you're saying, completely polemical. And part of the way to do that is to put characters in sort of tragic situations and find out what it looks like to have the lack of that ideal, and sort of create the space within the audience of both like empathy and reacting to the tragedy of whatever the loss is or whatever the complication is, and sort of connecting the dots themselves, because it's just more interesting to watch, number one, and allowing a person to sort of make that connection within themselves as opposed to having it just told to them.
Yeah.
It's more likely to stick with them, and it's kind of the point of all drama.
Yeah, exactly. And also having real characters.
Yeah.
By which I mean characters that feel like they have full internal worlds and exist beyond the edges of the story being told in that moment.
Yes.
Allows us to connect more strongly to their world, as opposed to having characters be like, I represent this and I represent this. Yeah.
And weirdly enough, like, the characters in Angels in America do sort of have that. They have, like, you understand them pretty clearly. They all have very specific sets of values, but, like, they still sort of stand alone as, like, having hobbies or,
and
like,
they don't stand up to their values either. They don't just exist standing to their values. Lewis rambles on and on about
the justice system.
The justice system, but that's only because that's just him being anxious about leaving his partner. And Roy Cohn is all about, like, the two Republican characters, both, like, they don't just represent that, like, they subvert that.
Yeah, it's almost like they use republicanism to, like, just to further their own gains. Like, they have their own shit going on as far as being in the closet or having these sort of weird power complexes or whatever.
Yeah.
And then using the Republican structures to sort of, like, try to keep moving and, like, stay hidden.
Exactly. Roy Cohn, and in the end, Roy Cohn and Joe Pitt have very different views. Like, Joe Pitt is very moralistic and believes everything is black and white,
right,
and etc. And Roy Cohn's like, it's blood red the meat, and etc. He doesn't care.
Totally. So churning bile.
Exactly. Gastric juices churning. Anyways, he's an amazing character. Roy Cohn is probably, and we could go on and on about each character. But yeah, just showing that, hey, look, these are both Republicans, but they're totally different people, and they have totally different ideals. So yeah, characters aren't just their worldview, they're also how they don't stand up to their worldview, which I think makes them more dynamic.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Do you have any questions? We're closing up on our time here.
Oh wow. See, Angels in America is such a huge piece of art that it's impossible. You could talk about it for hours and hours and still have more to speak. Yeah, I see you had a thing about agoraphobia. What?
Yeah.
What about agoraphobia?
Well, this is as good a topic as any to close on. Agoraphobia is an anxiety disorder characterized by symptoms in which in situations where the person perceives the environment to be unsafe, with no easy way to get away. It describes
Harper.
Harper, thank you. They describe Harper as having agoraphobia, in which she's afraid of foreign situations, so she stays inside all the time.
Yeah. And then she leaves, and if I could I just finish by reading her monologue?
Which monologue?
Night Flight to San Francisco.
Okay.
So this was written by Tony Kushner separately.
Okay.
Very early on, he had a friend named Ellen McLaughlin.
Okay.
No, not Ellen McLaughlin. Who's another actress who played the Angel originally, and she passed away. She had cancer as the first readings were happening. And the reason why the Angel is called the Bald Eagle of America was a little joke for him and his friend who was going to die because she was bald at the time.
Oh.
So she said she was the Bald Eagle of America.
Oh, wonderful.
And I just found it. And so he had written this little piece, and it was originally going to be one play, and he said, I don't know how to get to this point. And he showed it to her, and she said, his friend said, this is the most beautiful thing you've ever written. Make it into 2 plays. Find the way to get to this point. And if it takes 2 plays, it takes 2 plays. So this is the reason why it's 2 plays, which I think it encapsulates a lot.
Okay.
So this is called, this monologue is often referred to as Night Flight to San Francisco. It's spoken by Harper, who has now left New York and is making a new life after escaping her agoraphobia to an extent. Night flight to San Francisco. Chase the moon across America. God, it's been years since I was on a plane. When we hit 35,000 feet, we'll have reached the tropopause, the great belt of calm air, as close as I'll ever get to the ozone. I dreamed we were there. The plane leapt the tropopause, the safe air, and attained the outer rim, the ozone, which was ragged and torn, patches of it threadbare as old cheesecloth. And that was frightening. But I saw something only I could see, because of my astonishing ability to see such things. Souls were rising. From the earth far below, souls of the dead, of people who had perished, from famine, from war, from the plague, and they floated up like skydivers in reverse, limbs all akimbo, wheeling and spinning. And the souls of these departed joined hands, clasped ankles, and formed a web, a great net of souls, and the souls were 3 atom oxygen molecules of the stuff of ozone, and the outer rim absorbed them and was repaired. Nothing's lost forever. In this world, there is a kind of painful progress, longing for what we've left behind and dreaming ahead. At least, I think so.
Folks and freaks, thanks so much for tuning into the Oral Tradition with Jordy and David. We'll see you guys in the next episode where we review something equally heavy but also interesting. Hope to see you soon.
See you soon, lovers.